Oh my god. Vive has got some banging videos up right now. Chat, this is all extremely important context here that we need to watch. Destiny 2 lore, eyes and tentacles, the unknown new master of the Taken. It's not the winner.
There's been a development, something unprecedented, that has been expanding in front of our eyes the entire time, but which has also gone quietly unexplained. It concerns the Dreadnought, the Taken, and the many strange eyes and tendrils that have been undulating from the Ascendant Plane. Originally, it seemed as though these new Taken and the new infestation of the Dreadnought was a result of the Echo and the returning Taken King. But now, we have a new set of reasons to question this. There's always been hints that there's been some new presence stirring within the Dreadnought, stirring the Taken there, and there was always also an assumption that could go with this. With another influence being plied over the Taken, and with the whispers of its presence being more openly discussed, I always assumed that it was the Winnower, or perhaps that it was the Winnower working through the Echo of Navigation.
It makes sense.
This new iteration of Oryx has revealed to us recently through the Court of Blades that this might well not be the case at all.
We are not alone in the deep. Something I cannot see stands between the Winnower and the Taken. Carve these offerings free from their weakness, King, before something else does.
And so,
Interesting.
a new mystery unfolds.
What?
Between the Winnower and the Taken King's memory, a new force is rising from within the deep. One so far unknown to us, but one which has presumably been watching along this whole time. Today I'm going to try and lift the veil just a little bit on this new presence, and whilst I won't be able to lay down a concrete idea of who they are, I do have some rather interesting guesses as to what they might be. I think we should start off with some notable points. We know that these tendrils and the Taken are connected because the tendrils are also present on these new dire Taken. These tendrils may be part of what's connected to our new presence here on the Dreadnought, seeing as they do not appear to be connected to the new Echo of the Navigator. They do, however, seem to come forth from the Ascendant Plane. We can also presume that there are some factors at play that leave a little confusion for us, which needs to be untangled. The Taken appears to be following the command of the Dread under the leadership of the Subjugator, who is presumed to be Kater, the murderer of Eris Morn. But even this is questionable. In some instances, the Taken are working in service of the Dread. In other instances, such as in the Barrow Dyad Derealize mission, there are notes from Sloane that the Dread are actually turning on their Taken troops. And therefore, the relationship between these Taken and the Dread is somewhat unknown to us as well. What we do know is that the Dread and the Taken don't necessarily have an internal hierarchy where one is always leading the other, though. Both of them came here not to lead, but to follow. They were seeking out something that called them to the Dreadnought, something which has enough power to command them both, and lead them in the same way that the Witness or Oryx did. This is why I always initially assumed it was the Winnower. After all, what other kind of being could potentially command such respect and power? But guesses are always incomplete until we find out the whole picture, and this one was too. As it turned out, the whole picture, as Oryx stated, was that there was something stirring the Taken that stood between them and the Winnower. So our big bad of the entire universe is being mentioned here, but is still being kept in the background for now. As for what this thing is between the Winnower and the Taken, we don't know. This means we need to reassess basically everything about the whole of the episode, and all of the assumptions which I drew to the Winnower. There is inevitably going to be a fingerprint there. After all, where did the Taken come from? The assumption is the deep, and therefore the Winnower is the assumed creator of the Taken. However, this new force standing between the Winnower and the Taken is an unknown quantity to us, but its call brought the Taken and the Dread here. So, what is it? An unnamed and unknown master? And for the moment, and lacking any other information about who this might be or what this might be, that's kind of how I'm going to refer to this new threat. The Unknown Master will be the name I use until we get a better idea of...
It's not the 9, right? Like, what are the chances? We've got the ride of the 9 right around the corner, you know? It can't... also, someone said, why not Xivu? I think orcs would recognize if it's Xivu.
...of what it is. So, who or what is the Unknown Master of the Taken and the Dread? Starting at the top, we can take a few things for granted. Whatever it is, its tendrils pour outwards from the blights of Taken energy all over the Dreadnought, meaning that whatever it is, it...
That's a great point. Xur's got tentacles on his face, and there's tentacles here. Dude, there's our connections. It's fucking Xur.
...likely resides within the Ascendant Plane. If it's been controlling the Taken and the Dread, it's also likely to be the force behind the commandeering of the aversion anchors on the Dreadnought, which are being sent out to the various planets of the system. Whatever it ends up being, its intentions for Earth and Sol generally cannot be good. We also know that this Unknown Master must have knowledge of the power to take, because new Taken, dire Taken at that, are being created. That creates an extremely small list of potential candidates, and also implies that whoever it is must be unbelievably powerful to be able to call upon and command the attention of both the Taken and the Dread.
We are not alone in the deep. Something I cannot see stands between the Winnower and the Taken. Carve these offerings free from their weakness, King, before something else does.
I have kept watch over the husk of Akka as it slept, quiet and unclaimed. Now something, sent by hand unseen, vivifies the long-dead flesh of the Dreadnought, rousing ancient, Taken wills, hungry with ambition.
Something is doing this on purpose. The Taken are always looking for someone with a backbone strong enough to lead them. It's one thing to pull Taken from the Ascendant Plane and make them dance, but ringing out new ones.
In fact, this call has been going out across the entire system and has been picked up by the Dread and Taken, and it's been mentioned a whole bunch, not just by the audio, but also within the lore of the season as well. Assumptions just let us think that this force might be intimately connected to the Winnower, but again, those assumptions probably are incorrect at this point, so we need to reassess. For example, in the Apostate's Blade Helm, Sloane notices that behind the quieter whispers of the deep, which we presume are the Winnower at this point, there is also a new, louder voice that is asking her to take up the knife. In the Barrow Dyad mission, Sloane thought that the weapon we acquired was the source of the Taken power calling out to us, until the arrival of Xur and his Taken Remnant. Taken Remnant who might well also be attached to this new source of Taken power. The lore tab of the Barrow Dyad was also something that I assumed was making reference to the Winnower, but now I'm not so sure, especially seeing as it keeps on saying a sentence that seems to corroborate everything to do with what this entity appears to be calling upon each of us to do, which is take up the knife. It is what Sloane heard in her louder whispers as well. So we know there is that call constantly going out, but the real question then becomes, who is the call from? If we're going to answer that question, we should at least cross out a few names on our list first. For one, I don't believe it to be Akka, the worm god that Oryx killed long ago in order to learn the power to take. Akka is dead, and in some of the lore that we're going to read, he is basically non-responsive. After all, he has been turned into the baleful armor of the Dreadnought. He is dead, perhaps not too dead not to dream, but not able to control the Taken.
Yeah.
A character such as Toland the Shattered might have the inclination to control the Taken and Dread like this, but I think that they lack the power and influence to control them in such vast numbers.
You guys give Toland way too much credit. You know what I mean? In my opinion. I just think Toland gets way too much credit.
Unless something has changed and I didn't know about it. But as best I know, Toland is still living in his throne. Well, it's not quite a throne world. It's a spit of land in the Sea of Screams. It's more of a throne dumpster. Either way, I don't think it's Toland.
Nah,
I
man,
don't
it
think
can't
it's
be
Zevor
Toland.
Wrath either, not just because of her weakened state, but also because of the fact that her hive brood is currently on the Dreadnought and is at odds with the Taken and the Dread.
That's true.
I also doubt that it's Savathun, but it's not implausible given the wide-ranging scope of her powers. But the thing about all of them is that none of these characters truly fit snugly into everything to do with this new commanding voice over the Taken. And then there are the strange aesthetic qualities to whatever is behind this, the tendrils and the eyes that inflict suffocating terror. These are completely unknown to us. We've never seen anything quite like this. Even when we have seen similar instances of eyes, well, it's never really appeared quite like this. I don't think I recognize these kinds of eyes either. Not to mention, the command that this entity has over the Taken is rather staggering.
Where have we
these
seen
new
eyes
Taken
like that?
now have command over the powers of Stasis and Strand, amongst other things, which means that these dire Taken have some really deep source of darkness controlling them, I imagine. Something just doesn't add up here, and I think we have very few clues to really work on. It might well be that this is a completely unknown character that's never been introduced before, a mysterious and ominous eldritch force from deep within the Ascendant Plane that is reaching out now to control the Taken. Maybe there is no clue to it thus far in the lore, which would actually be kind of fresh, but I do have one really weird outside possibility to discuss. It starts with a perspective, namely Asa's perspective. She's also been hearing the call, and her perspective as a proto-hive worm god gives us some really unique insight, and it just so happens that there is a lore tab where we can hear her thoughts on the matter. In this lore tab, she is dreaming, just like she's been doing since her efforts to communicate with us through Sloane in the season
It's not as slitty, though. You know what I mean?
of the deep. But in those dreams, she hears a voice, a call of some sort. Take a listen to the lore tab from the new Sparrow, Endling Seek. We still hope to see another. What do you call someone who is blood of your blood, inheritor of a similar ancient lineage, yet deeply changed, whom you have never known dearly, in fact barely at all, but whose echoes you see in the still pond, the polished glass? Asa settles for cousin. Aya, Yul, Zol, Akka, dead Akka, whose everted bones circle Saturn in twin orbit with Titan, where Asa dreams.
Can I just say how much of a beast Oryx was? Oryx literally slayed Akka, and then right in front of all of the other worm gods, decided to just ride around it. You know like how fucked up that is? Just imagine that. Someone kills your cousin and it turns them into a bicycle, or in this case, a spaceship, and just cruises around the damn galaxy.
Of all the cousin names, it is that one that catches Asa, rolls along her flukes and shivers,
Literally
rippling
solo leveling,
in the methane
right?
dream. There is some mirror where Asa is the ship, Akka the refugee. An accident of parentage, one sibling this river, the other that stream. And so, how does Asa hate what she nearly was? Cousin bones, family bones, swimming as she does. In her marrow, she knows this. She is lucky.
She's grateful that she didn't get turned into a spaceship and obviously get killed.
Dead Akka hums, and Asa feels it stem to stern. She stirs from her dream to roll as she listens, a long stretch of blade's edge, crystal, parchment, and the breath of the galaxy along her flank. Asa hums back, of course. She can't help herself, even knowing better. Your cousin calls out, "I am here. Is anyone there?" And you answer. You answer. Dead Akka does not answer. It is a ghost firing of bone neurons. Zol does not answer. Zeta and Cell and Aura and Lace do not answer. Some glutted, war-fed cousin long across the sea of screams calls out. A distant worm song threat. Asa goes quiet. Remembers all at once. Presses her consciousness close to her titan. Settles back into a softer, subtler dream. In that dream, Asa is not the last. So it almost sounds like the one who was responding to these threats was a worm god of some kind.
Yeah.
Or maybe another Leviathan from all the way back on Fundament. A distant cousin of Asa and Arca. It might not be impossible for this to be one of the 3 remaining worm gods, namely Yul, Aya, or then why not mention them by name in that moment? They aren't unknown to Asa, presumably. What's more, the worm gods are presumably still in league with Xivu Arath and her brood to some extent.
Yeah.
So if they were the ones, or if one of them was the one controlling the Taken and the Dread, why in the world would they be battling against Xivu's forces? No, I personally am not convinced.
Dude, you guys just said it. Phoenix just said it. It's Teox. Teox is the one control. It's Teox.
That this is Yul, Aya, or although I could be wrong. Lord knows I have been thus far this season. It is always a possibility. But perhaps there is another possibility. Namely, the idea that there was another worm god, or proto-worm god survivor. A preposterous idea at first, I'm sure. But then again, we have heard rumblings of something that fits that description. Does anyone remember the Polyphony lore book back in Echoes? Perhaps not. After all, a lot of people stopped playing at certain points in time and didn't get into the lore of that season. However, there was one rather fascinating moment. A moment where the many perspectives within the Vex network basically described the moment when the Echo fell into the network. The Echo of Command would of course be claimed by Maya Sundaresh, but there were others watching in that moment. The Polyphony, As a Stranger, Give It Welcome lorebook tells us of many perspectives. Copies of Osiris that were lost, the remnants of Pradif, the many Ishtar Collective researchers, and then there is another. The short excerpt from the lorebook reads, "The great quiet thing, the knotworm, kept its eyes closed and ignored the call. It was still too soon, it decided. It shivered, the motion forming cascading bubbles of new hypothetical simulations in which it did not shiver. These contradictions soured and burst, scattering nutrients into the network." This is next to nothing to go on, and frankly, I don't put too much stock in it for the moment. It's an interesting possibility.
I don't know, man. I'm kind of with Bife's original idea. Maybe there's some distant Leviathan / worm god out there that's taking up or trying to take up the mantle here. A Vex worm? It could be the source of Vex milk. Oh, wouldn't that be trippy?
And it is also somewhat marred by the fact that this is a being within the Vex network. However, that doesn't completely kill the idea, because, after all, Asa heard the call from across the Sea of Screams and across the Ascendant Plane, and also, the call from the Dreadnought seems to be coming from the deep. And as it turns out, you can indeed connect the Vex network to the Ascendant Plane. We know this thanks to Crota. It's the reason that he was banished from the High
That's
War.
right!
He allowed the Vex, including Quaria, to invade.
Yeah.
And through sword logic, they were able to gain purchase for close to a century, until Oryx returned and beat back the forces of the Vex. After this, he took Crota and told him to return glorious or die forgotten, throwing him into the Vex network through the same hole that he had carved with his blade. And so, we do indeed have the possibility of linking the Ascendant Plane
Honestly, Oryx was a great dad. He really was.
to the Vex network. It's not impossible, therefore, that the Sea of Screams, the main darkness that drives through the entirety of that dimension, is somehow connected to the Vex network as well. If that is the case, then perhaps this not worm has been watching for a long time, and maybe now it is the time for it to engage, and thus it has started calling out. We have nothing concrete. Everything I've just stated is only a series of guesses, and even with that last guess,
Juicy though,
I
man.
believe that we still don't know enough to put anything firmly down.
Okay.
I would almost love it if this was nothing mentioned in the lore and that the story revolved around this new unknown master of the Taken being an anonymous force that we would discover later. Something which is alluded to and which brings us down a path of ambition, but which also calls out to us, and yet we do not know its name. Eldritch horror is something hard to do, but in this instance I think there's a chance for the Taken to represent what that might be. And remember, even if we don't know the name of this entity, even if we've never seen it, we know that it's there. And more importantly, it enticed us to claim the Barrow Dyad. Its call set us on the path of ambition. This entity is nothing to take lightly. It still has a stake in what's going on the Dreadnought, and it is one piece of the mystery of this place that we still do not understand. Unraveling it is doubtless bound to be important.
This is great. Everyone, please like this video, but this also takes us to Bive's most recent video. This is right here, Destiny 2 Lord, the Taken's new god is replacing the Winnower. What are they?
So normally I don't make a video about a topic that I've covered in the last 2 or 3 videos pretty extensively, but this time I'm going to make an exception, partially because I think this topic is one of the most important I might cover all year. It might also be one of the most important kind of topics that I've covered for a very long time on this channel because it involves the entire nature of the game, and also because of the fact that this is just a very fluid and evolving situation. More dialogue and lore is coming out in Act 2 of Heresy, and it keeps changing this fundamental topic. For those of you who don't know, last video I talked about how the Echo of Navigation told us that there was something stirring within the deep. The line in question is as follows.
We are not alone in the deep. Something I cannot see stands between the Winnower and the Taken. Carve these offerings free from their weakness, King, before something else does.
Now, this on its own was fascinating enough that I made an entire previous video talking about it, and talking about who or what this new presence between the Taken and the Winnower might be. If you want to go ahead and get my not-so-up-to-date thoughts on that, that's going to be linked down below in the description, but it is also the last Destiny video after this one that I published. Check the playlist for Heresy if you have missed that as well.
Video.
But as Destiny Lore Vault and the rest of the community had started digging their teeth into Act 2, more information started to get uncovered, and the situation has begun to evolve. Suffice to say, things are escalating wildly to the point where I'm not looking at this unknown new master of the Taken as just another force of the deep. The way that Oryx is talking about it, this thing is potentially not just a claimant to the title of Taken King, but might even be usurping the territory and power of the Winnower itself. And if that isn't giving you alarm bells, well,
So the equivalent of what? The
should be.
witness?
To give everyone an idea of how dramatic that statement really is, this unknown thing has been dredged up from the depths of hell and is starting to claim Hell's Lair for itself, robbing the metaphorical devil and his underlings of their power. In the space of 3 days, this has escalated from a curiosity to a mystery to an imperative concern and narrative question for just about everybody in the setting. The Vanguard, Eris, Sloane, the Hive Gods, the Echo of Navigation, and even apparently the Winnower itself. All of these parties are being impacted by the arrival of this new unknown master of the Taken. And the craziest part of all is that we still don't know who this person or what this thing is. We just have theories. In the last 24 hours alone, I scraped the comment sections of videos and looked through things and read through possible theories, and let me tell you, opinions are all over the place. primarily because nobody knows. In the space of those 24 hours, I saw suggestions including the idea that it was a remnant of Arca, the Knotworm within the Vex network, thanks, that's partly my fault that that's out there, an unknown worm god survivor of Fundament, Teox, Nezarek, Toland, one of the Nine, Skira the Watcher, a remnant of Rolk, and about a dozen more. The common thread with all of these is that nobody knows who or what this force is. There are some theories that make more sense than others, but the force remains relatively mysterious. We simply know it for the myriad of eyes and tentacles that are pouring forth from the Ascendant Plane into our reality. That and the new Dire Taken, who share that similar aesthetic as we find on the Dreadnought. Today, I'm going to go over some new information that we've learned from Oryx's dialogue. I'm going to talk about one of the other lore tabs that exists in Act 2, which includes what I think might be the entity itself potentially speaking, and I'm going to talk about a new lore book that I've seen no one else talk about, that shows the perspective of the Taken as they raise their voices in a hollow chant to their new master. Really quickly though, if I had to sum up all that I've learned in a single digestible notion, Toland once said that it was the architecture of these spaces that there must always be a strongest one. It was this reason he gave when he stated that we should take up the mantle of the Taken King. When we killed Oryx, we refused to take up that mantle. And from that one choice, someone, or maybe worse, something, might have seen the opportunity to occupy that yawning power vacuum for itself, and become the new ruler of the Taken, the new sovereign.
We should have did it. We should have done it.
King to rule these Taken and to reign as the next great tyrant of the deep. So, let's start at the top. Oryx has a bunch of new dialogue from the Court of Blades, which Destiny Lore Vault began uploading as of a few nights ago. Some of that dialogue makes further commentary on this idea that not all of the Taken are responding to Oryx. In fact, it's the Echo of Navigation itself that is telling us all of this. Here, take a listen to these 3 snippets.
A shift has occurred within the deep. What once offered recognition is now tinged with apathy. Arrest its attention. Taken slain here are not all called back to me. There's another well of want, drawing them in. I shall seek it out. Here you will learn to cleave flesh from will. They are lured by a whisper, sunken into their mind.
This would be bad enough on its own. A confirmation from the Echo of Navigation here.
It's like a Taken civil war happening right now.
Tells us that there is something within the deep that is rising to control the Taken. Xivu Arath has a few words to say on this matter as well, though, ironically, for that statement it is not voiced, of course. So, here are some things she's said. Warrior of the Sky, your will wavers. I feel the Taken recoil from your claim.
Okay, talking to us.
Xivu also has a pretty in-depth description of this unknown master of the Taken, and yet, it is still an abstract one. So abstract, in fact, that it sounds practically eldritch. She says, there is a wound in the deep, a fissure of lust and hate and greed. Its shape defies description like color in the dark. So I cannot find it, cannot crush it. Consider my brother's throne, Sky Warrior. Forever a blade in the hands of anyone else could describe a new high war.
Is she inviting
Here,
us?
Xivu also gets to the bloody heart of the matter. This new foe, this unknown master, is a potential claimant to the throne of Oryx and the mantle of the Taken King. Oryx's memory within the Echo seems to also confirm this with a statement of its own. Take a listen.
A challenger awaits. Only one may take my throne and quell the unrest in the Ascendant Plane.
So yet again, it appears that Toland may well have been right. There must always be a strongest one, for it is the nature of these spaces. And in our absence, even though we are the heir apparent, something else has arisen to take that place. But it gets worse than that, and this is the most shocking revelation to me at very least. There is a voice line here from the Echo of Navigation that seems to imply that this unknown presence is impacting the deep to a degree that the Winnower itself should be able to do. If that is true, it's laying claim to some of the abilities that the Winnower should have, including the ability to carve paths, whatever that means. Remember that this could be anything. Carving paths, for me, makes me wonder if it's talking about opening up portals between the Ascendant Plane and reality. But again, the important bit is not what that ability is, but the idea that normally that is an ability that is reserved for the Winnower. Listen to what the Echo of Navigation has to say.
I know the wills of every knife in this realm. I hear them scream as the strong metastasize the weak. And I feel a strength I do not know, carving paths that should belong to the Winnower.
That's literally right from him.
Won't.
That is the most distressing line of it all. And again, let me put that in perspective for you. A new, strongest presence has arisen within the Ascendant Plane and is claiming the mantle of the Taken King, or is attempting to do so. It is described by Xivu Arath as a wound within the Ascendant Plane, and its power and abilities are so great that it's starting to take on and carve paths that should belong to the Winnower. And remember that the Winnower is not just some entity, it is the same godlike figure that is almost certainly behind the creation of not only our greatest foes in the form of Oryx and the Witness, but also, if its accounts are to be believed, the universe itself. There's a word for what this thing is, and it goes further than the idea of it being a claimant to the throne of the Taken King. It goes further than the idea of it simply being the knife. If it is doing what I think it's doing, and if it's starting to exercise control over what should belong to the Winnower within the Ascendant Plane, then this thing is no mere claimant, it is a usurper. And not just a usurper of kings and thrones or other mortal constructs. It is a usurper of gods and dimensions and the fundamental fabric of the universe. This thing is
That's
like
hot,
a Lovecraftian god. It is angry. It is a pit of hate. It is a wound in the Ascendant Plane. And nobody knows where to find it. We just know that it's there. All this on its own would be troubling enough, and frankly, it's made worse by the fact that we have no clue who or what this entity is.
I'm gonna be honest. It can't be anyone we know already. I don't think anything we have dealt with is on that level. And even though like we meme about Teox, I don't think it'd be Teox.
But I think we do have a few likely instances in the lore where we can see a little bit more from the perspective of this thing. I struggle to call it a person because we don't know what this thing is. It could be that it's just some great entity that defies our explanation and our understanding. It could be something personal. But the first of the places where we can find some influence of this within the lore is the Barrow Dyad. Now, I'm not going to go over that because I already covered it in a video all of its own. Watch that if you're interested, but just remember that this is quite possibly the entity that drew us down this path. Previously, I thought that was the Winnower because, well, any other voice within the deep, given that it wasn't the Echo of Navigation, was likely to be the Winnower. And now this thing has kind of stepped into its place.
Has Bife ever been right? Bife is always right. And you gotta understand, Bife is talking to us from the perspective of someone who's experiencing the game with us. I don't give a shit about the data miners. I don't give a shit about people that have been hacking into stuff and fucking, got 6 months of content coming. I like keeping him with Bife because he's in the same boat as all of us.
It is something that supposedly is the source of the call. Also, just a little note, this is me going off script. Remember the Barrow Dyad mission where eventually we end up sealing that massive area at the corruption core of the Dreadnought?
Yep.
Yeah, in the Path of Ambition, we unseal that same area. In one sense, it is resolve, and we flush whatever was the taken presence into the Ascendant Plane. And in the other instance, we unseal that door and step into the Ascendant Plane. Yeah. And you can tell this because briefly we get torn between dimensions. So yeah, not looking good on that front of things.
Joe! Thank you for the fight. Get to
may
Joe.
Well have been a trap still. I stand by that idea. But I think it might have been something which was laid as a foundation from this strange entity to us. The other major place within the lore for some insight into this being, though, is the new glaive from the heretical arsenal, Refusal of the Call. It's always the glaives, man, I swear.
Well,
The glaive itself has a lore tab that speaks to the Taken and seemingly assesses their situation. And just for the sake of honesty, we're still not sure who this is. There is a small chance that this could be the Winnower, if it is indeed the Winnower talking in the Destiny 1 Grimoire cards that speak about the individual Taken entities. I say that because, well, it's formatted very similarly to this one. It even ends in the same kind of way. Sort of a take up this knife. It is shaped like brackets, whatever is relevant to that being. That being said, there was never any true confirmation that this was the Winnower, and, well, I've loved making that assumption because it seems less and less likely every day that it was Oryx. But with everything going on now, with the idea that there is a new entity out there, I have no idea who was talking in those Grimoire cards. And honestly, I have no idea who's talking here. All I'm saying is, keep your mind open to the possibility that this isn't exactly who we think it is. Especially if the Winnower's role is being usurped. Who knows what this could be. Anyway, this is the lore tab for Refusal of the Call. Don't listen. You are taken. Dark and nameless, shifting in the corners of the world, unmade by your god. Oryx, the Lord of Shapes, cut you into your present form. Wielding Willbreaker, he broke you.
Us, really? Okay.
To be taken is to accept the knife, accept the pain, accept the sweet pang of a question that cannot be denied.
Oh, yes.
Oryx, the Lord of Shapes, is dead. No will can replace the void of your own. What is left for you? Who are you without the commanding will? There is a new hand on the knife's hilt. It calls to you in the hollow chambers of your dying heart. The knife offers new purpose. Will you accept it?
Oh my god, dude, this is so vague.
Now, this doesn't tell us much other than confirming once again that this new entity is indeed a new commanding will that is seeking to control the Taken. If it is referring to itself in the third person, which is not impossible, we can at least tell that they have a penchant for being a bit cocky. Then again, this could quietly be the Winnower again speaking within this lore entry, describing the new individual who has taken up the knife within their hands. And, well, maybe that does make sense. Whether this factors into its designs or not is yet to be seen, but if this is encroaching upon the territory of the Winnower, I'm not so sure. This would normally be where the story ends for the moment, but in my tired and delirious state one night, I stumbled across a not-so-well-hidden secret in the Nether, which, again, I still haven't seen anyone talk about. I don't know if this is another Vesper's Host situation, where I'm just the first person to discover something and put it online when it's like right in front of our faces, but yeah, I found a new lore book, and there's some dialogue from Sloane that comes along with this too. Basically, you discover this by going into the Nether, go to the mausoleum, and then enter this corridor passageway here. Martin's going to be rolling the tape of what this looks like. If you have completed Act 1 by the looks of things, you can just hit this console here, and then walk through this portal. And now you're here. 2 chests, and opening one of them gives you some dialogue from Sloane and gives you some new lore books. The dialogue is not voiced, but it reads as follows. Guardian, I mentioned that there's a new influence on the Taken, like feedback over a comms channel. It's been getting stronger and gaining clarity, like a radio signal gradually tuning in. I didn't want to mention this until I was sure, but it has a familiar rhythm to it. A cadence. I'm not sure how, but I'm afraid a Dread Commander gained access to the Taken. Keep this between us for now. I don't want to raise alarm unnecessarily. Just keep your eyes open.
I mean, that makes sense, right? The subjugator?
This bit of dialogue alone gives us potentially all the hints we need, and potentially none of them. We know that the Dread Commander, Kate Eyre, or who we presume is Kate Eyre, has been commanding the Taken since we saw her doing just that against Eris and the Drifter at the start of the episode. There's an outside possibility that this means Kater is the source of the eyes, and that this is a mostly sorted mystery. But I don't think I agree with this assertion, and there's a simple reason why. Namely, Kater is just a subjugator. Now, she might be the very first subjugator, meaning that she's a lot more powerful than any of her peers, and that is a valid point to raise. But the level of power we're looking at here does not make sense for Kater. We're looking at something that is capable of claiming the throne of the Taken King, and is starting to crowd in on the Winnower's authority and the power within the deep. This thing has been described by Zivor Arath as not only something that she cannot find, like color in the dark, but also as a wound within the deep itself. Call me wrong here if you want, but I don't think that something of that description comes from a simple subjugator. No. If you ask me, whilst Kater is probably the commander of the Taken and the Dread within the Dreadnought, I think our subjugator friend here is just a captain to a general. Who is that general? Well, that's not been revealed to us yet. But I do not believe she is the one in charge. I believe she is a subordinate. This isn't all we get from this secret area in the Nether, though. We also get those 2 lawbook entries in an all-new lawbook called The Songs of Dissent. And for those wondering, that is not dissent spelt with D-I-S-S-E-N-T, as in to disagree with something quite vocally. It is dissent like a submarine, going into the deep. To sum it up briefly, these books appear to be written from the perspective of the Taken. At least the 2 entries we have so far definitely are. They make for a fascinating read. The entries are titled First Song of the Taken and Song for the Knife. The first one, First Song of the Taken, reads as follows. Sing in the dark a new song, a wordless song. Raise the tocsin and the bone flute. Speak in the voice of the drum. Sing for the loss of the king.
I'm making down right now.
Sing for the loss of Willbreaker.
All right.
Oryx, our geometer, shaped us. Before him, we were nothing. Without him, we are nothing. We are nothing in his command. The royal knife cuts away excess and leaves sweet pain. Willbreaker's blade is the length of the universe. It blots out stars and gives shade to the weary. All who tire of life and its struggle, all the sapient and the cursed give way to the knife and its eclipsing will. Who are we without the Lord of Shapes? What hand will guide us? What knife will cut away that which we do not miss? What nerves will spark and signal our limbs to move? The king is agony, his absence worse. We look to the dark, we look for another, one to raise the blade of shaping. Sing in the dark, a song of waiting, a patient song. Pluck at the hair-strung harp, cry out to the depths. Sing until an answer comes. The answer comes. The answer comes. We will it. The answer comes. This first song of the Taken is a hymn of lamentation. It's a song made to voice their suffering. It shows the pain we've inflicted upon the Taken since we destroyed Oryx nearly a decade ago. It appears that they have felt weak and listless without a strong enough leader to guide them. Without the shade of Willbreaker's eclipsing darkness, they seethe without purpose. This prayer through song was a prayer for deliverance. But the Taken have always sought out a master to lead them, and without that overriding will, they are more nothing than they usually are. Through this song in the dark that they performed, they cried out to the deep. They willed something to answer their call and continue to harrow them until they were made sharper. They wished for an answer, and after 10 long years, it appears that they've found it. A new hand which takes up the knife left by us after we defeated Oryx. Now the Taken have begun to sing for this knife, this new threat, this unknown master. That second song, the second entry in this lore book, is recorded as follows. A call from the empty chambers, from the small and the weak. Reach into the deep, siblings, reach into the deep, cousins, taken from among the many stars by the king, shaped anew and set adrift. We were nothing. We are nothing. We will be nothing. Raise your soundless voices, raise your arms in prayer signs. Feel the curdling in the deepest dark, a new shape for the god. Multiply your nullity, expand the nothing of your heart, every night anew, every evening again. Let vacancy call a new tenant. Our plea begs an answer. Our objection creates mastery. Our vessel without a pilot demands a shipmaster's hand. We were nothing. We are nothing. We will be nothing. Repetition is our guide. Make habit of prayer. Perform ritual, siblings. Speak liturgy, cousins. And feel the pull of the king's throne. As star forms from dust, a new voice rises from the sea of screams. It answers our belief. It rises to our song. Our shipwreck gone adrift
Bars,
will be
man.
guided
Bars.
to shore. We were nothing. Command us. We are nothing. Command us. We will be
Dude, somebody call
nothing.
Kanye.
Command us. O new silent voice in the dark, be our will, our guide, our king.
We got an instant hit
Command us.
right on us right now.
This second hymn's wordings seem to make one thing very clear. They also make something a little easier
Maybe
to
not
speculate
Kanye.
on. The thing they make clear is that whatever this new godlike figure was,
Hold on. Have y'all not heard? There is a song, hold on, that he did recently. As Kanye has gotten older, and look, obviously, like the antics he's gotten up to has gotten crazy, right? But I've noticed as he's gotten older, the music, I wouldn't say has gotten worse, but the lyrics have gotten extremely simple. And maybe it's just like rap music in general. The bars that were repeated over and over right here, pretty good. However, tell me if you see a similarity with this in terms of repetition. Shorty wanna fuck? Whoa, I'm gonna let her hop on something. Shorty wanna fuck? Whoa, I'm gonna let her hop on something. Shorty wanna fuck? Whoa, I'm gonna let her hop on something. That's repeated 4 more times. I'm not saying it's bad. I mean, I'm just saying, like, if there's anyone that could possibly spin this, because we are nothing, we will be nothing. A lot of repetition. Who knows? Maybe this can be spun. You know what I mean?
silent voice in the
Lyrical genius.
dark, be our will, our guide, our king. Command us.
Shorty want to command us.
This second hymn's wordings seem to make one thing very clear. They also make something a little easier to speculate on. The thing they make clear is that whatever this new godlike figure was, it rose from the sea of screams itself. The roiling darkness that surrounds you when you gaze out upon the ascendant plane, that turbulent, dark, unending storm, that.
Please just stick to Destiny, dude. Kivo, I don't think anyone here is confused by what I am attempting to do. If you think there's a future in me, I don't know, becoming a ghostwriter for Drake, it ain't happening, all right? That's not my forte, never has been. I listen to music maybe once a month, all right?
Is the sea of screams. It is what lies between the throne worlds of the ascendant plane and the ley lines that traverse it. It is what Mara Sov traversed through when
Shorty wanna bang spankers.
she returned from Oryx's throne to her own. It is the sea in which the spit of land that Toland claims can be found. It is a realm of unknowns, and a place where only darkness reigns.
Bars, baby,
But
bars.
from that certain
Chat, we're supposed to be paying attention to the lore. I gotta rewatch this.
it is what lies between the throne worlds of the Ascendant Plane and the ley lines that traverse it. It is what Mara Sov traversed through when she returned from Oryx's throne to her
Mara's
own.
daddy. It's
It is the
Mara's
sea
daddy,
in
man.
which the spit of land that Toland claims can be found. It is a realm of unknowns and a place where only darkness reigns. But from that certain notion, I want to discuss one other interesting idea. In the first song of The Taken, there's a line that reads, the answer comes, we will it, the answer comes. In the second entry, the Song for the Knife, there's a few lines that sort of echo this idea. Those lines read, feel the curdling in the deepest dark, a new shape for the god. And our plea begs an answer, our objection creates mastery. And finally, and feel the pull of the king's throne as star forms from dust, a new voice rises from the sea of screams. I want to put forward this idea, even though I personally doubt it myself, because it feels wild. But doesn't all of that make it sound as though the Taken created this entity themselves? The entity is described as a pit of lust and hate and greed by Zivur Wrath. The Taken themselves are described as an unending hunger, which could align with all of these ideas if stretched somewhat. And then, it's also described by Zivur Wrath as being nearly impossible to find, like colour in the dark, and the Taken keep on describing themselves as nothing. We were nothing, we are nothing, we will be nothing. What if the Taken's need for a master and their combined prayers and power was enough to eventually
You think that
coalesce
hits? Y'all think that
into
hits?
something that exists now within the Sea of Screams and rises to rule over the Taken? After all, the Ascendant Plane is a place that can be reshaped according to one's will. I've long referred to it as a psychomutable dimension, aka a space that can be shaped by one's
Safe
own
and
willpower.
or self-aware Taken
This,
ruler.
after all, is how throne worlds work, and it seems no different for the Ascendant Plane. If the will of the Taken was to have a leader, and if they prayed enough, it might have just been possible for them to create such a leader through the sheer power of their own will. Now, this is where I need to cast some doubt on this theory, because the Taken are the antithesis of will. They have no desires for themselves except to serve their master. Such a lack of capacity might then seem to indicate that they would be incapable of summoning such a god into existence. It's also worth noting that the act of creation itself tends to be a facet of what happens with the light within the physical universe.
Yeah.
But then again, this is the Ascendant Plane, and it is a space with its own rules and its own laws. So who knows,
Vasquez!
perhaps the emptiness
Vasquez,
and the
thank you so much for the
nothingness
10.
that the
Chat, please
Taken
drop some
felt
love.
that they sang out for hollowed something out within the Ascendant Plane, a wound that has now manifested and is alive, something that has come to take over, and which is claiming the knife for itself. Ultimately, regardless of any theories, any lore books, any bits of dialogue, any lore tabs, all of this leads me back to the same set of conclusions that we had at the start. The Taken have a new master. Whatever it is attempting to take its place upon the throne of the Taken King. If we're also to extrapolate that one line of dialogue, this new being is potentially claiming some of the power and the role that once belonged to the Winnower, carving paths that should belong to it. And above all, we do not know who or what this new unknown master is. But there are hints, there are clues. Wherever we see eyes, wherever we go and see tentacles, we see its influence. It appears to be the one that is behind the aversion anchors that are being dropped all over the system. And we now have a direct tie-in to the perspective of the Taken being commanded by it, the Songs of Descent, which will unveil more of the mysteries of this force. As we find more of them, I shall look into more of them. But until we understand more about this, all we can do is watch, wait, and be ready. A new power is rising, The scope of this power is something genuinely unprecedented. I have to say this also now, because I feel like it is important to say for the point of perspective. Bungie, in their writing, has always given us hints. We've always had teasers. We've always had a nod here or there. For the first time in my 12 years covering this franchise, I have no answers. That is equal parts delightful and terrifying. A presence with this much power leaves marks upon the universe and stories in its wake. That is how it's always been. Beings with colossal power leave ripples across the universe, ripples that affect everyone. Even we have done this with our actions. But this time, there are no such ripples. Just a gaping maw with endless questions. This time, the presence before us simply is. I have no explanation for it. No one does. If they're telling you otherwise, they're lying. Nobody has enough tangible proof to nail down an idea truly of what this thing is. We only have guesses. And that is the most refreshed I felt about the lore in a long, long time. Bungie said some time ago that they were leaning into the world of mysteries with Destiny, and they wanted the lore to delight us, surprise us, and offer us new glimpses into crazy ideas. And this is the most convinced I've been that they are doing that in a while. More, please. This is excellent stuff. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, long as it was, go ahead and leave a like and...
Wonderful video. Chat, for the love of God, please go check this out, man. Can I get some links in here being spammed? I have no idea. I was hoping that maybe something would just jump out to me the more I listened and the more I learned. But I agree with Bive. There's just nothing tangible. And this is very well may just be someone new. And look, the whole like idea of like maybe the Taken willed this person, I don't know if that hits as hard for me. You know what I mean? I'll tell you what would be really cool. If there seems to be a structure, a hierarchy, if you will, because all we know is like at the top, we know there's the winnower and the traveler, but we don't really know if they're the top of the hierarchy structure or if they're just the two beings that somehow created everything, right? They're the creators of the universe, right? They play the flower game, whatever. But it would be interesting if there was like almost like a monarchy of sorts, you know, and you know, the fact that they're even, you know, throwing out things like king and essentially, is there a way where things will come back full circle where you're like, all right, this is the layout of the monarchy or hierarchy, whatever. And then you see where the witness fit in on that. It's like, imagine if suddenly we see the witness a year or two from now, not necessarily live, but we see what his power level was in comparison to everyone else. And it ended up being like, he was an A-tier boss. You know what I'm saying? To us right now, he was fucking S-tier. Hell, to anything that's whooping your ass feels like S-tier. And I'm thinking like solo leveling right here, right? But I'm talking about like, what if we get to, we go a year or two in the future and it's like, with the witness wasn't even the strongest. You know, he was an A-tier boss. You know, and then there's like, then the S tiers. And then of course, like, you know, there's a huge range within that. He was just a butter knife. But like, you know, there needs to be some way of like recentering things. Like, imagine if we got some scene down the road where it was like, it turns out the witness, the reason why he was trying to enact the final shape was that he was running from something. Now that'd be wild. That would be wild.
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.